Oh yeah.
I'm gonna open YouTube just to make sure it looks good. YouTube. Okay, yes, we are. Looks like we are streaming. Okay, perfect. We're streaming. Just wanted to make sure that I checked. And okay, so does it look like I'm ready to start the meeting, Jonas, or do you think I'm missing something?
I think you're good.
Okay.
Like the only thing that might be is ping folks in Slack, like give them a live link maybe. But
oh,
I can do that while you talk with that.
I mean, yeah, that's a good idea. I also want to share the link to the I have a group chat with the GSOD folks, so
okay,
to remind the ones
that
that haven't joined. Okay. All right. Oh, and Rohit has joined. Yay, we have 2 of the GSOD folks. Yeah. Please remember to join our meeting. Right. So I don't know if Buzzwati is joining us because I know that she was traveling to London around these days. So it's possible she might not join, but I would expect to see at least Mafusa join us. But since it is already 4 minutes into the meeting time, I think we should probably start so we can get our questions. We have a lot of questions, I think. Okay, cool. So I think we have everything running, and I think that, oh, it's fine, Rohit, you didn't miss anything. I was just setting everything up. Boring stuff. So I think we're ready to start. So everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Can everyone hear me okay? Is the volume okay? Okay, cool. As you probably already know, this is the Spec 3 documentation meeting. We have had Jonas has been running a Spec 3 meeting for a while now. And, he's doing all this hard work, release coordinator, I think is what he's doing. But of course, on the documentation side, we have a lot of new folks this year for GSOD and soon the mentorship program. We're going to keep adding more docs. And these writers that are working with us, as well as me, are struggling to figure out. Hey, leave it. It's okay. Sorry, my dogs got scared. Sorry. Sorry. I have a lot of dogs. I'm sorry. Anyway, so we have a lot of questions about how to write our documentation and to make sure that it's actually with Spec 3 in mind. And so right now we have Ridesh and Rohit with our GSOD group who have their drafts that they've already started for their GSOD work. But they're struggling to understand what part of what they've written so far is correct according to Spec 3 and how much of what they've written is wrong, and just mentioning how things work in 2.6. So we have a feeling that a major rewrite is needed, and that's fine, but really the best way to get these questions answered is not just the feedback, comments, and the pull requests, but that's why we're going to be hosting these meetings. So a big thank you to all the Spec 3 contributors who joined our call today, because it's another meeting, yay! But thank you for coming and helping us out. If it's okay with everyone, I would like to ask Jonas my first questions. Is that okay? All right, cool. Sure. So first I'll torture Jonas, and then after that, the GSOD folks can start torturing him. So it'll be fun all around.
Luckily, we have a lot of contributors, so I'm gonna funnel it to whoever doesn't speak enough. So we can split it out.
But really really
No,
looking
you
forward
can't
to
leave.
specifically torturing
And
you
then
now.
Lucas. God.
Okay,
That's fine.
I'm gonna share screen, and then please let me know if you can see what I'm looking at. Okay,
Yep.
cool. So the first question that I have is, so on my end, I'm also supposed to be writing changes to the docs and updating things for Spec 3. So here's where my question comes in is, when we look at our current documentation, we've been figuring out what is the, I'm opening them, in our current docs, what needs to be changed, what needs to be updated. And so Jonas opened a pull request, which we're looking at right now to address this question. And as we can see, Jonas seems to have identified that under tutorials, the entire getting started section needs to be majorly updated, and that's a big chunk. And then he's also identified that both of our guides are outdated. And then seems like he identified some changes for the concept application. Now, under the concepts content bucket, it seems that he's only identified one document to change. So it's not too scary. Yay. And then in tools, he identified that there's something in the parser document that needs to, well, yeah, it makes sense. It's coding the old spec version there. So on my end, my first question is, like, some of these smaller things like here where you're updating the code snippet, like that makes sense to me. Obviously, I'm not confused about that change. But what I feel confused about on action items on my end is when I see that to me, when I see this, it looks like you're deleting all of this content. So I felt confused about, wait, what is wrong and what do I need to fix? Like, where do I start? So that's what I was struggling with.
Yeah, so the mindset was that we wanted to prepare the website so it's not blocking any release of version 3. So that means that we, as quickly as possible, have a website version that contains all relevant information about version 3 without having anything referencing version 2 in any way that would confuse the reader. So the idea was that we take this minimalistic approach and say anything that has specific version 2 changes. So that's basically all of those that I removed that I couldn't easily update. I simply removed so we can add it once they have been fixed. So that's why that also there's a to-do task on the PR that once it's merged, I'll make sure that we add issues or one issue to track whatever has been removed so we can update it. So those whatever documentation have been removed isn't forgotten about.
I have a question on that. Wouldn't it be more logical to make the list of what is changing, confirm it, and then merge your deletion?
Can you repeat the question?
So here you're suggesting that after we merge and delete outdated documentation, we make a list of, oh, right, what do we need to change? But I think it might be more logical if we first make the list, confirm it, and then we delete content.
But that's what the PR is for. Like, that's where the discussion will happen. Like, once we agree that these are all the things that needs to be changed. So that means that once this PR is merged and reviewed and we agree that these are the changes that needs to be done, then I create the issue. So that is the mindset, yeah. So this is just my suggestion of all the documentation changes that's needed. I expect that you would review this, for example, and say, this is not needed, or this shouldn't have been removed, or we are forgetting about this documentation, whatever. So that's the review part that's still in progress, right? So this is just my suggestion.
Yes, just it sounded like the opposite of what I said. It's okay. So how can I get clarification on what needs to be updated in these documents. Because yes, I agree that now that we're going to have versioning in place for the old documentation, this will just stay over in the old version. But I need more specifics so I know how to bring these back updated with Spec 3. And that's where I'm still not quite getting the answer, I think.
That's the next issue. So once we agree that these things needs to be updated, the next issue I create after this has been removed is going to contain all basically a more clarification on each of those documents about what needs to change or what might affect whatever is stated in them.
Okay, got it. And then the other question I had was, are you also the folks, the folks, wow, you're only one person, not plural. Are you also the person who's working on adding the version for our old documentation, or is that somebody else?
So that specific thing is not something that that needs to that we need to do much about. So when we release version 3, we basically freeze whatever we have in the master branch, copy it over to some other branch, whatever website freeze branch, and that basically have all of the commits up to the point where we release version 3. There might be some smaller things that needs to be changed once we do that, but I don't think I can do this change because I'm not code owner. I don't have access to Netlify, for example.
Right.
So
Okay.
it's
So I know
else
that
probably.
because like I left off with the idea that we were going to use a versioning solution for storing our old documentation. So then does somebody on this call know who's going to do that, just out of curiosity and understanding what's going on? Lucas?
Yes, and that's gonna be me.
Oh.
And I will not wait until the the release, but we have to create actually this V2. Excuse me. We need to create this V2 branch earlier so we can set up Netlify, so we can actually explore how we should configure robot txt, and like this, so the basically SEO does not hurt us in the future that we duplicate content on the two different domains. So I'll check if we have issue for it already. If not, then I'll create one. But yeah, I'll be the one that creates the branch, cuts today's or tomorrow's state, and then when we release, we can always update this V2 branch with the latest master. But yeah, that's
Let's make sure
cleanup on
that let's make sure that we don't forget to add canonical tags to the content that seems almost the same. For the content that is changing significantly due to Spec 3, we don't really need canonical tags for that because the Google bots or whatever search engine bots can definitely tell that this is a different specification version. But let's make sure we don't forget about canonical tags. So like you said, good SEO.
Yeah.
Okay, so then
so yeah, but just to let you know, like, so I will tag you folks anyway, because I think we I want to check how others do it, because I strongly believe that people, what they do, they actually cut this old versions from SEO to not confuse and complicate. And then if people really use old version, they can just always go through it from some panel in the 3.0 docs that say, like, if you're using V2, this is where you find the docs. So I want to just double check with some other open source projects how they do it. So it's not like per content that we set canonical, but maybe it's the best really to cut, like to block crawlers from accessing V2. And one more thing that we also need to check out is that, because it's Maciek who was handling it, is this Algolia search. So we probably will have to also adjust this search configuration there in Algolia. But yeah, that's going to be in the issue if the issue is not there yet.
Okay, cool. So Jonas, do you need from me in this pull request to confirm like, oh yeah, sure, go delete it? Or sorry, what do you need from me so that I don't block this? I guess is what I'm asking. Oh, you're muted.
So thanks. So yeah, I have no power over the website, so I need someone's approval of code owners. So either that's you or whoever else is code owner on the review or on the website.
Okay. I mean, since I don't know whether or not this is correct, I'm assuming this is technically accurate. So like my instinct is to just hit approve right now. Is that a bad idea? Are you waiting for something?
I would probably not. I would, if I were you, I would probably double check whatever files I deleted and then agree that those files contain v2 specific structures. If the alternative is you just approve, yeah.
I mean, I did look at these. I looked at them, I think it was yesterday or the day before when we were like joking back and forth in the issue. And that's why at first I was shocked because I was like, whoa, this is a lot of content to change. But anyway, at least looking at what you selected when I looked at this before, I think it makes sense. And so in my limited understanding of the differences of 2 versus 3, I already reviewed this and I think it looks correct. But should we have another spec contributor also review and confirm your diagnosis, for example?
If you want that, yeah, for sure.
I was gonna say Sergio, but wasn't Sergio also the one who thought no changes needed to happen? So now I don't know if I trust his review capabilities.
It's fine. I mean, I can pass if you want. I'm happy with that as well. You know, that what was like 1 month ago or something like this, Alejandro?
Oh, okay. What?
I mean, when I told you that it was few changes, 1 month ago or 2 months ago, right?
Yeah, probably about 2 months,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, for me it was like 1 year ago. You don't know how many things happened in the meantime. So it's another Sergio. Yeah, I will. I'm happy to review that. I'm gonna review it today, in fact, so we can have the green light to go. I mean, I have to say that it was weird to me, this strategy of removing things, to be honest, because I had to think like 3 times what is going to happen with contributors if they are going to lose Git history, you know, of contributions. Like one file is contributed by 5 authors. So what's happening if we are removing them? But if we bring back those files, right? Since those are going to be in another branch, everything will be fixed when we merge to master. So I'm not concerned. Just in case someone else has this concern, right?
But yeah, I feel like that's not necessarily a concern to limit changes, though, because every time there's changes and improvements, like things are going to get deleted. Like that's going to happen. I don't know that I'd be worried about contributors feeling sad that now their file is not there, or maybe I'm misunderstanding your concern.
No, I'm not saying. My first thought was okay. If we remove files, whenever we get them back, the author is not gonna be the same, right? Let's say you wrote file A and Jonas is bringing it back later, so you won't appear in that file anymore, right? And it's not about just a patch that I wrote that file. It's just for blaming in the good sense, like who wrote that documentation and so on. But since this is going to be merged first in one branch, that is the next spec measure, I don't remember, and then merge into master, the only things that will be merged, as far as I think, is going to be the changes on the lines, right?
Yeah.
So theoretically, the rest of the text that is not modified should be kept. So authors should be there as well.
Did you also have another question, Sergio, earlier? Because I saw you raising your hand, but I felt like it took a while for us to get to you.
No. It was about you already, Lucas said about the search bar, or I don't remember this.
Algolia.
Yeah, Algolia. It's okay.
Okay. So I feel like I definitely asked my main question. I think I understand. Oh, no, I know I understand the process in this moving forward. And I don't want to take away more time from this call from the other GSOT folks. So now I actually want to stop screen sharing, and I would like one of the GSOT folks to take up their questions. So who would like to go first? All right, I'm gonna pick someone. Ridesh, you're next.
All right, I just raised my hand. So good
Oh,
night, guys.
I can't hear you very well.
Am I audible now?
Yeah. Can you also screen share and walk us through your pull request and your questions? And if you could
Regarding
share
the
a
pull
link.
request, it's just a few general set of questions regarding this organization that I still don't understand. But for the pull request, I'll get that later. Just some questions. So my first question, am I audible here?
Kind of. It's a little bit, a little hazy.
It's
Might
a
be
little
hard.
Hello.
Might be hard. Say a few sentences.
Am I audible now? I'm so sorry. This always happens. Yeah.
Much better.
So my number one point would be sometimes when I write documentation, right, and I like to include code samples in the documentation because I feel code samples is a really great initiative for developers to understand what's going on. So when writing code samples, is there any way I could get started with there are two different concepts, right? There's the conceptual information, which I am very comfortable with now, but then there's the practical and implied knowledge that comes from experience. So is there a certain path or procedure you would recommend for me to get really good understanding of Async API, not from the conceptual point of it, but from understanding point of it, applied point of it. So when I write code, I'm more confident about it. Or when I write Async API specifications or the YAML file, I feel more confident.
Was that a question for me?
Dealer's choice.
Anyway,
Anyway.
I mean, the only thing I can say in those situations are get some hands-on experience, try and define an application with Async API, try and define it with it. That's the only way that those, what's it called? Inferred knowledge. Can't remember what you called it. But that's the only way to really gain experience with the documentation. And the best way that I know or how I would do it is with a personal project. Try and apply it to something that I find interesting. That way, the task of learning it is even better.
Like, I do think that they are trying to do that, but I do also think that they need more support than just being told, go play with it. Learn, let me know how it goes. Like, how can we do we have different subject matter experts, right? And so, for example, I can help them in my area of expertise, but they do need a little bit more examples and feedback and code snippets from different contributors who are already like doing this. So how can they get a little bit more support there?
Slack.
If I can just add on just some information, there's a difference between understanding hooks, you know what's abstraction, you know how to apply different concepts. But there's a difference when you start programming and you start understanding, okay, here we should use abstraction, or here you should use encapsulation. There's just a little bit difference when someone teaches you, okay, here you use encapsulation. In using encapsulation abstraction, and every solution is not the right fit, right? There's a specific solution for a specific problem. So that is what I'm struggling with.
My suggestion would be Slack for sure. So when you learn stuff with Async API and you start writing documentation, you probably encounter some kind of blockers where it's like, I need like this specific scenario. I don't know if this is better or this is better. The best approach is take that minimalistic example, write it in Slack and get help from whoever is available. That is what Slack is for. If you have those questions where you are starting your learning path and it's like, I'm encountering like a blocker here because I'm missing some information, whatever that information is, then Slack is definitely the best option. And I would highly suggest not to do it in private, do it in open, because there's might be more people that has the same question. There's more people that can help. So yeah, that's definitely my top recommendation.
Do you feel like that helps you, Ridesh, to not feel blocked, or is there something else that you're hoping to help? I don't know.
I just want to know if there are, so usually when you're developing something, right, you need the solution in short amount of time, because till then you understand the problem. The problem is, even when I was writing my draft, I included a code snippet, and I wanted to know if it's right or wrong. Right, if it's right or wrong. During a day or 2 days, I still understand what the problem is. I still have the same mindset. But if I get a reply after a week, my thought process might be broken, right? So that making that sync is a little bit it's a little bit difficult to get back into the same mindset what I was thinking. So if there are certain people that we can add the rate, for example, you or Lucas, or specific people we can add the rate who can maybe give us an answer in maybe 2-3 days, where we still have the same mindset and we don't feel the disconnect between.
He's CC someone when we put out the message, right? Yeah.
I mean, I definitely feel Ridesh's pain there, and it's not just like a pain that GSOD students have. I think that in general, a lot of us here in our open source project, we have our hands in a lot of pies, as they say in English. So sometimes by the time we rotate back to the first pie, it's like been a week or two, and there's like so many pull requests that are open. There's a lot of things going on there. So definitely, like, I don't know that this helps Ridesh a lot, but like, you're not alone. Yay, this happens to all of us. But the flip side is, like, we do need to try to support our interns better this year, because like, I am going to say, like, because I'm trying to help them the best that I can. And, it's not ideal for them to feel that it takes 2 weeks to a month to maybe get a spec contributor to respond to their questions. And it is also not fair to expect only Lucas to spend hours and hours of his already busy time helping GSOD students. This should not all be on Lucas, and it should not be all on the poor student to somehow figure their way out. So like, I do want to call out spec contributors. Please think of ways that you can have more time available to help review pull requests, because documentation is part of the feature of the code you wrote. So it should also be you involved.
Maybe on the note of PRs taking long time to review and a lot of back and forth, etc., one important suggestion might be that when you ask a question that's very specific, do it as minimalistic as possible. If you have a huge example, but in theory, it's only like 10 lines that you are questioning, don't include 300 lines. And the same with, for example, if you have a PR that you need very specific information about someone, or not someone, if you need something that's very spec-free specific, don't wait in a pull request. Post it on Slack and make sure that you ping folks as well. And not specific, how to ping folks is like, you can rewrite your question again or share it again in the same Slack channel if you haven't received any answers. So if this goes like 3 days, for example, let's just use 3 days as a guideline. If you haven't received any response in 3 days, ping the person again or ping the channel again. I really need, or maybe rephrase it a little bit, etc. So yeah. But the thing is, we get a lot of notifications. So there is a lot of clutter as well. So the repeating of I need something here is probably the best I can, just not too frequently, because if you don't give us enough time, then it's like, do it in moderate.
What if I create a bot that reminds you every 5 seconds? Is that too much?
Yeah, that's too much.
That's
you're gonna get blocked real fast.
Oh dear, yeah, definitely getting my answers then. So actually, I really like what Jonas said, and it's actually really good feedback for you folks, the GSOD interns. It's very true what he said, that many times people will go, yo, subject matter expert, I have a question. And they submit like a whole trilogy of random things that are in their mind, but there's not actually a specific question. So that's not going to help you either. Like if you write a huge long comment, but don't really take the time to really think about, wait, what's my actual specific question? What is the one thing that I can't figure out? Then you are going to like shoot yourselves in the foot. So you also need to be considerate of the spec contributors and think about what is the most concise and precise question. Like, how can I write this so that it's 100% clear what I need from them? So, if you write something and someone like Jonas goes, I don't see where the question is here, like, don't feel offended. See that as an opportunity to grow as a writer and to really think about how to ask for feedback and comments. Okay, cool. So, Radish, does that help you? And maybe we can move on to other. Okay, cool.
Wait, but that's on the that's on the side from experienced folks to give ideas for students. But I think also, even though Slack and pull request is good, it's async, etc. But we also, as experienced folks, as spec contributors, we should also remember that sometimes it's really not enough. Text is not enough, and sometimes really there has to be a verbal discussion. So we also should try to commit as much time as we're able to have short calls with contributors, like 30 minutes, with Fathom, where it's recorded, where it's transcripted. So even this 30 minutes, I bet always is overwhelming for someone that listens to some explanation, but they can then go through recording a few times, do additional research and understand the topic. Because like the situation we're in is that there's a bunch of experienced folks that don't have time. And there's a bunch of like super enthusiastic, energetic people, students coming in that they want to contribute, but they are lacking this knowledge. And it's not always that easy to gain this knowledge through own research and just back and forth in Slack. So we should also be open that sometimes to break through the blocker, it's just better to really have a short, even 30 minutes call. Because like, that's how I was solving many issues in the past, like, and it was helping a lot when I was having GSOT folks for generator. We were simply having a knowledge sharing sessions where that I was recording, and they were able to go back to the recording, and then we could have a really like a lot of technical accurate documents produced. So we should keep the balance, like not always think that Slack is enough. Also on our contributors, at the maintainer side, we should remember that sometimes we need to spend more time on board someone.
Spec 3 contributors, Jonas, Sergio, Fran, etc. And I love it when somebody else says the truth and it's not just always me. I love it. It feels good. It's like I'm so blind and I'm always the one that's saying blunt things. So it's nice when it's not just me, Okay, cool. Thank you so much. And I do want to be mindful of time for all the questions. And I see Rohit is ready to go with his questions. So to you.
Yeah, so my question is actually quite similar to the one that Fredesh had, because of the knowledge gap. And I think Lucas remembers that I pinged him on a PR earlier this week, a couple of days back, where he mentioned that it refers to 2.6 and material needs to be changed. So I was wondering what are those changes that he was pointing at, like if he could just point me to what are the things that he needs me to change, or what are some more resources for me to next time be more proactive and look out for those by myself. Like, okay, this is where I need to see that there could have been changes made. So be more proactive there so that I don't make the same mistake again, not me or anyone from our team. So
wait, do you mean this PR about the structure?
Sorry?
The structure related PR, you mean?
Yeah, the AsyncAPI document structure related PR.
Yeah. So in this case, that's like, so I think the biggest problem was the confusion, because I think you and someone else already have PRs that are targeting master. Yes. Which is something that we need to like clarify. So do we want to accept any changes into master, or not really? Because like if you're targeting master, then the content is totally different. If you're targeting next master spec, then the content is totally different because it describes totally different version of the async API. So my main question would be, like you as GSOC contributors, is there anything you're targeting for 2.x version of the?
No. Everything is 3.
Okay.
And any content you see that's not reflected in 3 is because of lack of knowledge.
Yes.
Okay.
So I've mentioned this on the comments too, as a reply to your comment on the PR. Every material or content that we will be working on as part of GSOD is all going to target Spec 3.0 only. No Spec 2.0 version of any sort, only Spec 3.0. And it kind of makes sense when you say that we are targeting master now, because the content on master right now is relating to Spec 2.0, and the content we are supposed to write is Spec 3. So how do you suggest then we send our PRs in, or how is this supposed to work?
The only way is to close your PR, configure your local environment with next spec. Next spec. What's the name? Jonas, next. No.
Next major spec.
Next major spec. So there's another branch in the website which already is there. Next major spec.
Okay.
And that's the branch against which Jonas has this pull request to remove some content that has to later be brought in back. So you need to refresh your pull request. So basically close and open new, because you probably created a branch out of master. So better if you create a branch out of next major spec. And then we continue, and let's have a chat, like because I don't remember what was the scope of your issue, but yeah, that's
so just to sum it up, so to see if we got it right, you mean to close the PRs that we've opened now, me and the other PRs, and then refrain from making any changes to the master and stick to this new branch, the branch called next major spec, where the new content is already being developed and changes are being made, and commit to that branch, right? Yeah. So commit to that branch and continue the discussions or whatever it is only in that branch.
Yeah, like cut out from that branch your branches and always target this one.
And all of us should be working on the same branch, the next major spec branch.
Yes, it's the next major.
Next major spec.
You have to create your own branch, okay?
And
work on your own branch, and whenever you want to merge against this next measure spec.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just to clarify. Okay.
Yeah. And I'm suggesting to close and open new, because I think the best is when you cut out from the branch that you're targeting, not the master. And if there's a Git way to do it without closing PR and just updating, then go ahead. I just suck at Git, and I always just close and recreate.
I think we could rebase. To some from the current branch. Anyway, we'll be opening it from our branch to next spec branch, right? So instead of targeting it to master, we could target it to next spec major because it's not merged yet. So we could rebase it, or if it's not possible, just close it and then we'll open up a new one.
If you have a better solution and you're sure it's not gonna give you headaches in the future with merging changes, then yeah. But basically, the next major spec is the branch that all of you should target, not master.
So just a couple more things. You were mentioning that to get on a short 30-minute call or something with any of the SMEs, right? So how do you suggest we approach that? How do we approach an SME, or for example, you or Jonas? Because I understand that all of you are busy. I wouldn't know who to ping, or even in the channel. So how would you suggest we approach someone for the short call, or should we do it weekly or when our PR is ready? And just how would you suggest we do that in a moderate way?
It's case by case. So sometimes probably without an onboarding call, you can't even start. Sometimes it's just fine for you, but maybe common sense would be try Slack. And if the discussion in Slack doesn't give you any help, then ask the person that
hop on a call.
is there to hop on a call.
Okay, so just ping in the Slack or privately if anyone's available and see if anybody is ready to hop on a call, maybe weekly or based on the case, like as you mentioned, based on the work, weekly or bi-weekly would work, I guess.
Yeah.
But and just the last question about those resources again, is there anything, some way we could find our own mistakes, like find more resources for Spec 3.0 and learn by ourselves and write accordingly?
Yeah.
So not
Yeah,
sure how you approach this topic now. So because there's obviously not much learning materials, but so how I would approach it with no knowledge about the topic, I would basically get familiar with the current documentation and explanation about AsyncAPI 2.0. Because mainly the goal is that, as far as I remember, the minimum goal is to update existing docs, not to add the new docs. Right? So
no,
What are you talking about? We're writing new docs for GSOD.
We are
What do you
writing
mean?
new concept. A whole separate subcategory is going to be coming up.
which is?
AsyncAPI document covering each of the sections and the root elements of the document are going to be covered in detail with operations and everything.
Oh yeah. You know, okay. I'm so confused. Like you
So
mean
it's
this?
not, we are adding a whole new.
You mean this
content.
missing documents?
Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
going to be a completely different subcategory that is going to come under concepts. So we are essentially adding new documents, right? As you said.
So with these new documents, there's no help. There's just onboarding call. With new.
So you directly suggest that before we start writing the drafts, we reach out to any of the SMEs, hop on an onboarding call and figure out the outline or the work with them and then start writing?
Yeah, I mean, the other resources you could try, I did a workshop some time ago about AsyncAPI.
Everybody saw it.
There might be something in the general specific document, but there's not all the topics are covered. And not always the call is needed. So for example, trades, if there's a document that is not existing and you want to provide a new document that is covering trades, then we will probably not have to have a call, because I remember some time ago we had a super extensive discussion on a community call with one contributor from SAP, where the whole algorithm behind the trades was explained. So there's some learning material, for example, for trades. So, but like in general, if there's a need for a new doc, it means that there's probably not much content. Sorry, but you can always try to ask again, like try with Slack. Ask like, hey, I want to provide a new document that explains the concept behind operations. And if anyone has anything to recommend to read about AsyncAPI and operations, what's the point? If nobody can do it, then ask for a call.
And I do think that you should continue with what you're doing. First, you come to the SME with an outline you already wrote. Like, don't just go to the SME with no work done and say, hey, help me do this. Like,
so the thing is, what happened in my mind is, since we got over this, we had this start in my last call with Alejandro, where she suggested me that I go through the pull requests in this next major spec, where you guys are actually making these spec changes, and go through the pull requests so that I have a better idea as to what I'm supposed to write about and what changes are coming up. So, for example, if I'm writing about operations, then I would go to the next major spec branch and check any pull requests that would involve or relate to this topic, and see if there are any changes that I need to keep in mind. And after getting that ground knowledge, maybe I could start building an outline. And after I have that outline, I reach out to someone like Fran or you, and then discuss about it with you on the call and see how to go about writing the first draft.
Oh, quick amendment. I would actually try reaching out to like other contributors like Jonas or Sergio first before you bother Fran. Not because I don't think Fran should help, but because I know that the reality is that Fran is, like, because of his position, all over the place. So I would really like tailor like your questions more to a regular contributor, because you're more likely to get a response sooner because they'll have more bandwidth than Fran.
We'll actually put the message out first in the specification and docs channel and specification channel actually, and see if anybody is willing to hop on a call about that.
Yeah.
Does that?
And then I don't want to be rude. I'm not trying to cut you off. I just want to be mindful of time and make sure that Mafusa has also plenty of time to ask questions. How are you going with your questions, Rohit?
I'm done. That was my last question.
But,
Okay, cool.
But just to add, because we drifted from my answer because I was more focused on modifications, not the new docs. But in case of modifications, like there's a guide about I don't know which ones the documents that Jonas is now removing. Like for example, it's there on the list. Security. So for example, the security.md. It's a file that is supposed to be updated entirely. Jonas suggested that it's removed now. So if there's an existing document that describes behavior in 2.0, 2.1, 2.2, blah, 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 the learning material is basically a diff between whatever security talks about in 2.0, whatever security is described in 3.0, plus a very good document that Jonas already wrote, which is the release notes request and migration guide pull request. Because there's a lot of good content. It's not just a bullet point list that Jonas did, but Jonas actually did a visualization of, for example, what happens with operation between 2.0 and 3.0. And why we moved it, and he points out the pull request. So, so basically, use this huge effort that he did, and use it as your source of truth, like to understand what more or less has to be modified in the documents. Yeah.
All right, so now let's go to Mafusa because I really don't want her not to have time to ask all her questions. That would be really rude.
So the thing is, I had few questions, but I got those questions answered. So I'm good to go.
Really? Like no questions, Mafusa? Wow. Okay. Well, you must be smarter than all of us put together then, because clearly.
Definitely not. Definitely not.
Definitely smarter than Fran and Lucas and Jonas, probably, at the very least.
That's it.
Okay, cool. So then one last point that I do want to remind everyone, just to make sure that this wasn't missed, because there was like a lot of information in the call. Videsh, Rohit, Mafusa, please remember what Lucas mentioned earlier, that we are going to be doing all of our GSOD work in a feature branch. So did that make sense to you, Mafusa? Like you're all good? Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure because that was important. Oh my goodness, we actually have 10 minutes left. Does anybody else have some comment or question they want to add?
Actually, there's one issue I just noticed. When I looked on Jonas' pull requests, Jonas, when we had a call yesterday, Node.js template was not on the list, right? For must-have.
Nope.
Yeah, but tutorials
But what?
are based on Node.js template.
Well, someone needs to update it then.
Context for others. So like yesterday we had this call, a Spec 3.0 call about scope of tooling updates that have to be done. And Node.js template was not on the list. It's nice to have, but not necessarily something that we need to provide for 3.0 release. But I just realized that we have like Streetlight tutorial. All of this is based on Node.js template.
May I suggest that we reconvert this tutorial to Glee, since Glee is going to be migrated, and it's going to be much easier actually to set up. than the Node.js template. So might be a good opportunity.
Depends on what the documentation is, I guess, because if it is generator related, it doesn't,
it is
like,
just
it's unrelated.
It is
No,
just for the user to see that they write the document and they get something working, like quickly. It's just that feeling that, oh, cool, I got something working quickly. There's nothing really advanced in the code. It's advanced because you have to go to the code and see the code generated. It's a little bit advanced in this sense, but not in terms of business logic. I think the only thing we do there is to say something like hello world, something like that on the code. So yeah, to do that, it will be much easier to do that in English, and that will not complicate the tutorial even more. Actually, it will simplify the tutorial.
What are the missing things to do in the tutorial, in the template? Sorry. So there are, I'm not aware of how many changes.
I think if I remember correctly, I think you have to go to the config file and change some things on the config file, but I don't remember exactly. We can check.
You mean
with the CLI, we can just generate the GLI project immediately, and you have to do nothing. It will be done. You can just execute it. So yeah. And on the other hand as well, but that's more like a, let's say, as a personal goal maybe, but I think this initiative in general should be moving towards a different direction than simply generating code. So, and simply generating docs. So docs and generating docs and generating code is cool, but let's say the lifetime of the generated code is short, to say it in a way. So people usually generate code, and then they touch the AsyncAPI file, then they touch the code, and at different speeds, and then it becomes it becomes problematic because your code doesn't reflect what the spec is saying. The spec doesn't reflect what your code is doing. So quickly, after some time, what people realize is I don't need AsyncAPI anymore because it's just for documentation, so I'm not going to use it. So that doesn't happen with frameworks like GLI, right? That you have to maintain the two at the same time, otherwise it won't work. And as an example, this doesn't happen with GraphQL, for instance. Again, it's not GLI concept or anything like that. Like that problem that doesn't happen on GraphQL because you need to update the GraphQL schema to continue working on the code, or in gRPC because you have to keep updating the gRPC schema while working on your code. But we're inheriting this from the OpenAPI initiative. There's, let's say, tradition of generating code from the spec. But all my experience in the past have been really terrible about code generation. Not the moment of generating the code, but in the long term, like having to maintain this. And yeah, we tell people to regenerate on top of the existing code, but that's a pain, nobody does. So maybe that's a tool that we should maintain, but maybe that shouldn't be the first thing that people see. You know what I mean? That shouldn't be like the recommended thing to do. I don't know, but yeah, that's another discussion, of course. Just saying that.
But GLI is not on the list as well, right?
Huh?
GLI is also not on the priority list.
It's not on the list, but Suvik is already preparing to migrate. So yeah, it's not in the required list. As Modelina is not, but I'm sure Modelina is going to be ready. Right? So yeah, it's not required, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to be there.
Just for the record, so it's there. I disagree.
Oh,
okay.
We have 4 minutes left. We don't have time for this.
About what? Sorry?
Whatever you said.
Okay,
Almost
okay.
everything.
About code generation, obviously.
That Modelina wasn't going to be there.
Let's
No, no.
argue about that in another phone call.
No.
Let's argue about documentation. Ridesh, did you have one last question? Because I think I saw you raised your hand. Or was that
It
it?
was not
Nope.
a question. It was just a small comment. I joined the Spec meeting yesterday, and I was as bamboozled as the dog in a meme. I didn't understand anything, but then I went through the resources. So I would just like to thank for the resources. We could go through it and we could learn more. And if we struggle, then there's the stack, and with Fran recommending one-on-one calls, that would be great.
Cool. So I will be setting up this meeting again in another 2 weeks. And I mean, I don't know about you folks, but I found this super helpful to me. I definitely felt like I really needed this call. So thank you, Sergio and Jonas, for joining us in our call, and so glad to see Sergio back. Woo! And also thank you so much, Lucas and Fran and very quiet Samir for joining us in the call. Because it really helps to have a lot of people involved in this, because it's going to be a lot of work and it's good to have visibility. Hearts from Samir. He loves the community. Yay. Okay, cool. Well, are we all good to go, or yes? Yes, please say yes. Yes, let's go. All right, everybody have a great night and a great day. Goodbye.